Secretary of Defense James Mattis spent today at the U.S.-Mexico border visiting troops in South Texas.
They're deployed on a mission to assist Customs and Border Patrol agents preparing for the arrival of that migrant caravan. Our border reporter Oscar Margain joins us now from Donna with more.
Defense Secretary James Mattis was accompanied by Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen and other high-ranking DHS officials to tour this temporary base known as Camp Donna, currently housing 1,300 soldiers.
Right now we're trying to get that.
For about an hour, Secretaries Mattis and Nielsen met with troops stationed in the Rio Grande Valley and received a briefing on how soldiers have been supporting Customs and Border Protection agents. Over the past few weeks, Army soldiers and engineers have taken over this plot of land to set up camp. They've also been installing concertina wire around and in between ports of entry and helped conduct helicopter drop-off drills as they train for a possible scenario of migrants rushing the ports.
This is actually very good training because they're rehearsing everything they would do in a real deployment elsewhere in the world.
Mattis's visit drew a few spectators outside Camp Donna, including local resident Navy veteran Eddie Zamora, who's pleased to see so many soldiers at the border.
I'm excited and glad that we finally have somebody who's willing to take border security seriously, and I think he's part of that equation.
Meeting with servicemen and women is one way the Defense Secretary hopes to boost morale and clear any doubts about their support role at the border.
There's all sorts of stuff in the news and that sort of thing. You just concentrate on what your company commander, your battalion commander tells you. Because if you read all that stuff, you'll go nuts, you know what I mean?
Mattis reminded soldiers they're helping secure the border from a caravan that is about 1,500 miles away, part of which now reached the California border. Mattis said troops will be moved up and down the border as needed. Secretary Mattis said that he's considering upping the number of troops from 5,900 to 7,000 depending on the need of border agents. And although CBP had requested these troops to remain here up to December 15th, Mattis told soldiers that depending on how things unravel, their deployment could be extended through the holidays. In Donna, on the Texas-Mexico border, I'm Oscar Margain reporting.